discussion of the today's content, I would like to have a kind of a feedback from you before starting. Right. So I asked this question from you, and the answer is trying to be answer is your answer is expected, or you are supposed to answer in a different way, right? So here you have the class code, and I believe you all have your mobile phones with you, and so please scan this QR code and try to log into this particular class. Sometimes I think we have nearly over 100 participants. Maybe sometimes this software may allow you to maximum 20 people to log into this slide. Don't worry. So those who are first come first serve basis. So maximum 20 people will be accommodated into this class, right? So the others you don't have to worry. Those who are can I mean, people are logging now. Quickly log in to this particular platform, and I will ask some questions, and you can really engage with me with my discussion. So initially I'm taking your insights at basically 2 points, not all the time, since I have been given only 2 hours, nearly 2.5 hours. So during that time, I need to talk a lot during that time. So these type of uh, only two activities, these type of two activities will be done during this 2 hour session, rather than doing many more things in order to save my time. So this is the first my first question, right? So let's wait until a few others to join. Now we have 12 people to join, 14. So I think maximum 20 people are allowed to join this class. Yes, 15. We have 18 people joined already. 19. 20. So let's try. You can try whether you are allowed to join. I think you will not be able to. Right. So you have 21 joined. 23. 24. Maybe 50 people, I believe, are allowed to join. Yeah, maximum reached only 25 are allowed to join. Anyway, don't worry, those who are unable to join with this class. Now I will start the session. Now you can answer this question, right? So what is the question? What is the foundational component of any research project? Because you are supposed to visit, because this is thesis development workshop. So many things. I think this is the 10th session, I guess. Up from 1 to 9, you may have been discussed so many titles regarding your on how to develop your dissertation. So I believe you have many knowledge on how to develop your how to work uh, how to develop your thesis or how to write your thesis, right? So I'm asking now, what is the main component, foundational component of any research project? You can start writing, start answering now. Time starts now to answer. So using your mobile, now 20 people, 25 people have logged in. You can type whatever you want. The question is, what is the foundational component of any research? What is the main thing, core thing, foundation for any research? Only three have said research problem, right? Four, five people have said research problem, research topic one. Faslin, Indika, Nelusha, Imashi, Kishani, all people are telling that research problem is the foundation. And others, I think, in the yes, research problem. In the chat box as well, someone has text me as research problem. 11 people have said that the main foundation is the research problem for any kind of a research project. Yes, 12 people. Method, research problem. Priyanti Handapangod is saying that the research problem is the or the foundational component. 16 responses so far out of 25. Yes, so far only 16 responses. I will give you another 30 minutes, 30 seconds to answer. Right, I'm going to stop your submissions. Right, so you have given me so many few answers. One majority of you have said that the research problem is the foundation for any kind of research. Right, it's only 12 people, 13, 14 responses out of 16, out of 16 total received. Then research topic, purpose, direction, method. So these are not uh, the correct answer. And what do you think about this? Right? So how you find the research problem? How you find the research problem? Right? Keep this the same thing as it is. We can start another. Uh, how you find the problem? Research problem, right? So we can uh, insert this as a slide. Right, so we are now having this slide in our slideshow. We are going to uh, move to the second question. Right, restart an activity. Now you can answer the second question. How you find the problem? Yeah, anonymous as an attendee saying that through a research gap, sorry, research gap, unexplored research area. So how those research gap and unexplored area are found? How? How you can identify the research gap, unexplored research area? Yes, literature review. So we have 20 responses. Out of all these 20, majority has said literature review, right? So this large word says that the majority of responses. Right, now I'm going to stop your responses. We'll discuss this, right? So reviewing existing literature is literature. Identifying a gap, this one is again coming from the literature review. Then by doing literature review, same thing. Talk to experts and supervisors. Yes, initially you can talk to experts and supervisors, but you need to refine the problem by reviewing the literature, right? So you obviously the basic hints, basic ideas can be, can have from experts and supervisors, but you need to fine tune your research problem by simply referring the existing literature, right? So you need to check whether there is a problem. So then what is a problem? What is a problem? Problem is an unresolved solution, right? Unresolved, because problem is obviously we are unable to find a solution. Since we are unable to find a solution, we have a problem, right? So in that case, we need, because literature is the current knowledge, right? So we need to find out, because problem exists. In other words, we have problems because we can't find a solution, because problem exists due to the lack of knowledge to find solutions for those problems, right? So in the sense that, in other words, we have a knowledge gap. Because of knowledge gap, obviously we have problems, right? So if we have sufficient knowledge enough, obviously we don't have any problem, right? Think about COVID-19, right? Why people died so, having an increasing rate, right? So death rate was significant during that time. Why? Because we didn't have enough knowledge to find a vaccine. We didn't have any vaccine. So without vaccine, absence of any vaccine to, combat the virus, obviously, uh, is a kind of a knowledge gap, right? In the obviously it is a gap in the knowledge. Since we have a gap in the knowledge, we have a problem, right? So problem is derived from a literature review, fine tuned from a literature review. Then what is the answer? What is the answer for the first question? Is it research problem? Because problem is fine tuned from what? Problem is there, right? But basically problem identified, problem fine tuned, and problem refined, and gaps identified. From which, so obviously problem is a part of a gap, right? Problem, normally research problem denotes the reality plus the gap. Reality plus the gap. There are so many gap: knowledge gap, theoretical gap, empirical gaps, right? Mostly the knowledge gaps. Reality is the current scenario, gravity of the problem. For example, death rates in the COVID-19, right? That is the reality, right? So we had increasing death rates due to COVID-19 virus. So that is the reality, the gravity of the problem, right? So plus we didn't have any vaccine. We had earlier, in the we had a gap in the knowledge, right? So we were unable to find out a proper vaccine for the COVID-19. That is the gap, and those found basically and fine-tuned from a literature review. So then what is the foundational component of any research project? Then is the literature review. One can argue, as you said, right? So one can argue, as you said, the research problem is the foundation, but problem itself identified from a literature review through especially the gaps. Clear? So then, literature review. Today's topic is going to be discussed on that. How you fine tune your problem, how you find a research problem through literature review, right? So basically, people identify research problems in with the reality experiences. That is one thing, but another important thing is through reviewing literature and identifying the gaps, right? So obviously, gaps are identified through literature reviews. Gap is a part of a research problem. Clear? So foundation of a research project is the literature review. Right. Now, what is then literature review? Literature review is simply appraising the current knowledge. Right? So, appraising the current knowledge. What is an appraisal? Appraisal is simply identifying the gaps. You need to know on a particular research, on a particular subject area, you need to know what is the current knowledge on a particular topic. For example, if you are conducting a research study on workplace romance, workplace engagement, workplace motivation, right? Since I'm an HR, coming from HR discipline, always I'm taking HR related examples. Suppose you are going to conduct a research study on employee motivation, right? In that case, you need to find out what is the current knowledge on motivation, right? What is the existing knowledge on motivation? For that, you need to review, you need to find the current knowledge bases, current knowledge bases, sources, and review them. Reviewing in the sense that you need to appraise them, right? Reviewing simply means the appraisal, right? So reviewing here means the appraisal. So in the appraisal, what you do, you simply identify gaps, right? Inconsistencies in the current knowledge, gaps in the current knowledge, inconsistencies, contradictions, and unresolved questions in the current knowledge, right? So reviewing in the sense that identifying gaps, inconsistencies, contradictions, and unresolved questions, right? Simply by identifying, suppose you are going to conduct a research study on workplace romance, right? Workplace romance. Then you need to identify what are the available research investigations on workplace romance, right? Suppose you have found 1,000 journal articles, research investigations published in journals, 1,000. In those 1,000 journal articles, you simply need to analyze what is the current knowledge, what has been investigated, what has not been investigated. So since you investigate, since you can identify what has been investigated on in that 1,000 articles, obviously you can find out what are the areas for future research. Because while having the knowledge on current, while having the understanding on the current investigations, you can find out what are the future areas to be investigated. Simply, gaps can be identified, right? So, gaps in the sense that future areas for further research, right? So, simply the literature review help us to find out inconsistencies, gaps, and gaps can be taken for further research, right? So fundamentally, then knowledge advancement in a research, what we are going to do is simply we are going to create new knowledge. Knowledge advancement is going to be done through a research, right? For any kind of a research that you are undertaking must ultimately create new knowledge, right? Otherwise, that is not a research, right? In any kind of a research that you are going to undertake must ultimately create a new knowledge advancement must be there. That's why we need to do a research, right? So for that, first you need to identify the gaps need to be filled then in your research, right? For your research, then reviewing the current literature is essential, right? Now, uh, so literature review has many functions, as I said. The main function is it provides a foundation for research, as we said initially, as we discussed, right? Literature review provides the foundation for your research, is because literature review establishes the background for your research and the context for research, context for your research study. And also literature review help to identify the gaps here, identify the gaps, and again you can you can determine which methodology that you are going to use to conduct your research, because you are, suppose when you are when you are going to study workplace romance, you identify 1,000 available articles, 1,000 articles available in the world currently already investigated. You can review all these 1,000 articles, right? Not by manually, but you can simply, we have software tools, and I will let you know how to do that later on, right? So using software tools, we can simply analyze the findings and identify inconsistencies and simply identify what are the gaps available in those simply by referring all these 1,000 articles, and simply we can understand by referring these 1,000 articles what are the commonly investigated areas and what are the least common areas investigated, limitedly investigated. So limitedly investigated areas are the gaps, and maybe sometimes there are areas still which has not been investigated, right? So obviously, by simply referring all these investigations, we can understand what methodologies they have used in those 1,000 research studies. Then you can identify, based on by referring your the methodologies used in this study, the all these 1,000 studies, simply you can have a rough understanding about what type of a methodology then you must use in your study, because you can say 1,000 articles use this particular methodology with the rationality. Simply, yeah, you can take the same methodology for your study. If someone asks why you have used this methodology, you can provide a strong justification by referring all these articles, and since you have used this particular methodology, because most of the people who have done the same similar kind of research studies done on the same methodology. So that kind of a justification, not only that justification, but also several other justifications can be found for the methodology that you are going to use. In other words, methodology can be the right methodology can be selected by reviewing the current literature. Then, most importantly, your theoretical conceptual framework, because you prepare your based on your research problem, you develop your conceptual framework, right? So based on your problem, you develop your conceptual framework, and conceptual for developing conceptual framework, obviously you need to do a review, right? So basically you need to find out the underpinning theories, deriving the variables, supporting the variables or relationships in the conceptual framework, and you need to find the supporting theories for each and every relationship in the conceptual framework, and those are understood by simply reviewing the literature review and prevent duplication. Because when you take 1,000 articles for a particular area, suppose this is the available 1,000 articles, only available 1,000 articles, right? So then in that case, you refer all these articles, all these research publications, and understand that the same title that you have, yeah, that you are planning to conduct have been done by someone else. Then in that case, you identify that, you know that there is no point for doing the same thing. Repetitions is there because you, by reviewing the literature, you understand that, you identify that this study has been done by someone else in the same context, for example in Sri Lankan context. Then you knew that only by doing uh, the literature review, right? Since you did the literature review, you knew that, right? So literature review help us to prevent the research duplications and synthesize the knowledge, right? Simply you took all these findings in 1,000 articles or 10,000 articles or 20,000 articles, right? All available research findings in the world you considered for the review. Then all the findings in 10,000 articles can be synthesized, summarized, right? In that, basically you can say what are the most areas what are the common areas investigated, what are the areas which have not been investigated, right? So simply can be said that is synthesizing, right? Simply all the findings in 10,000 articles can be summarized into a paragraph, for example, into 10 themes, for example, right? So in that, simply you can say last 10 years, for example, these 10,000 articles have been published within the last 50 years. Suppose the area has been emerged in 1970s, and you search the literature from 1970s up to 2020, right? So during these last 50 years, you can simply say that you can synthesize the knowledge in the last 50 years into five themes, for example. So you can simply say that last 50 years research has been conducted on these five areas. That is a synthesis that can be done by a literature review. And simply, not only that, and you can justify your research, right? So for example, as you know, you have to defend your research thesis, mostly not sometimes in undergraduate level, but when it comes to the master's level and PhD level, obviously you have to defend your proposal before an expert panel, academic board, right? Before starting your project, and at the same time, and after completing the research project, right? Two IVOS examinations are there. During those examinations, you have to present your work, right? In order to approve your work, at the beginning the proposal must be presented, and at that kind of a presentation, experts may ask questions: why you did this, why you are going to do this study, for example, why you are going to do this, why you design this kind of a study, what is the main problem of this study, why you say that this is a problem. So these kind of questions might be asked from you. So in that case, you need to find evidence, justifications for, or rationalities for your research study. Then those can be found from a literature review, right? So those are the main functions of a literature review, right? Let me to erase all these drawings. Then literature reviews are two forms. One is background review, other one is standalone review. Normally, background review is normally uh, that is the one we do normally for any kind of a research, because once we identified the problem is, for the problem we do a literature review. As I said earlier, we define the problem, because problem, in the problem we must reflect the knowledge gaps, empirical gaps. The several gaps are there, right? So those gaps must be presented, or those gaps must be reflected in the problem to say that this is a problem. uh, For that, you need to do a literature review. So obviously, for your research problem, for your research, uh, background review need to be done in order to in order to provide a background for your research, right? So that is a background review, and that is reflected in the second chapter of your research thesis or dissertation normally, right? So that is called a background review. But when it comes to a PhD level research, normally before final thesis is submitted, several literature reviews need to be published as a separate, let's say, as a separate article in a journal. Literature review papers, for example, journal papers need to be submitted. So that has been mandatory, normally prescribed by the universities. Most of the universities, at least 3 publications need to be done from your literature review, right? So the background review, in that sense, in that case, background review can be published as a separate. Uh, uh, Obviously, the background review can be done as a separate research study, right? So literature review is a kind of a research study. You need to plan a literature review and execute, and finally find you need to make findings from the review, and finally that must be reported and published on a journal, in a journal, right? So that is again a kind of a research, and this background review can be done as a research, and then that can be published in a separate journal, in a journal as a separate standalone article, right? So that is the second version of a literature review, but I am not going to focus that this one standalone piece, journal article, or in other words journal article, literature review. Today my focus is this one: how you can design, once you identify a research problem, then that is fine tuned by the literature review, then how you can write your second chapter, what are the contents of your second chapter is the focus. But please note that there are various review methods, right? So various review methods, various literature review is the general terminology. Literature review, reviewing the current knowledge. For that, various literature review methods are there, right? One such very good, commonly used, scientific, highly reliable method is the systematic literature review nowadays, which is becoming so much popular with so many software tools and latest developments, technological developments, and which can be easily done as well, right? So therefore, this systematic literature review methodology is becoming so much popular, and today I'm going to tell you how the literature review is done with systematic methodology, and then based on the results of the systematic literature review, how you can design your second chapter. So that's the focus for today's session, right? So from chaos to clarity, transforming your dissertations, second chapter with systematic literature review. So that's the title for today's session: how you can design your second chapter of your research project with systematic literature review methodology, right? So this is the title for today's session, right? As I said earlier, you have initially, uh, in order to do a research, whether it may be a quantitative one or a qualitative one, you must have a conceptual framework, which is the game plan for your research, right? So conceptual framework, to develop the conceptual framework, as you said earlier at the very beginning, you must have a problem, right? So problem is defined, problem is developed based on the evidence from the reality, right? Reality itself is not the problem, right? So you have a reality. For example, you have uh, 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 You are seeing that there is a problem. For example, employees are not attending the workplace regularly. Then, uh, what do you think? Do you think that there is a knowledge gap? In order to increase the attendance, we have enough knowledge. What solutions, what are the, because in the HR books, HR research, we have so many solutions to promote attendance, right? We can refer them. Knowledge has been investigated to promote attendance, employee, to avoid employee absenteeism, right? There are no gaps for that, because so many investigations are there. Even reality is there. Sometimes gaps may not be there, right? So in order to do a research, reality plus gaps must be there. You need to justify what the reality is. You need to provide evidence, sufficient evidence about the gravity of the problem or gravity of the reality. For example, the classic example is COVID-19. How you can show the gravity of the COVID-19? By presenting the death rates. For the last month, you can provide statistics on the death rates during the last month. So by showing a graph, uh, having obviously it and having a significant increasing trend of death rates, we can show show the gravity of the problem, right? Something like this. For example, you can show a graph, right? So here, first week death rate was this at this much, and second week, third week, fourth week, fifth week, you have something like this, right? So earlier in the first week we have 10. Now at the fourth week, at the end of the fourth week, we have the death rate of 1500, right? So by looking at this kind of a graph, we can see the gravity of the problem, right? So this is the reality, and you need to present the gaps. To do that, you need to do a literature review, right? So obviously the problem must be reflected in a conceptual framework. Problem must be reflected in a conceptual framework. In that, basically, because that is the problem, once the problem is identified, you need to present this one, gaps and reality, and that must be reflected in a conceptual framework, right? So you need to conceptualize the problem, in other words, right? Conceptualizing the problem in the sense that obviously uh, you need to identify at least what is the independent variable and what are the independent variables and what are the dependent variables. Normally we denote the problem by the dependent variable, y variable, and so that may not be the same always, but for now let's say normally the problem is denoted by the dependent variable, right? So you are supposed to take only one variable for the dependent variable, one construct for the dependent variable, which is denoted by y. Y is the dependent variable, and you can simply identify several causes for this problem, for example from the literature review. Then those are the independent variables, right? So now if I delete all these drawings, I will let you know to draw your own what do you call this, own uh, conceptual framework based on a problem that you have identified. Now another activity. So we have 24 people already logged in. Restart activity. Now you can draw your own conceptual framework. You can draw because drawing icon is there. You can start drawing using the brush available on your interface on your mobile. Right. Why don't you write? Why don't you draw? Because that can be drawn. Your conceptual framework. I will remove one of you to log to let me to log in, right? So you can open a slide you have in your interface on your mobile. You have a brush and image with the word open slide. Press that one, right? Click that one. Once that is clicked, then you have this particular slide, and you can you have drawing tools. You can draw using the drawing tools. I'm simply drawing this kind of a model. Submit. Right, then I will edit that one. This is the independent variable. This is the independent variable. This is the dependent IV and DV. Yes, please. Can someone draw your own uh, conceptual framework? Right. Anyways, since the time is running fast, I'm stopping this activity, and I will draw. Right. Suppose this is the model. This is my conceptual framework. Simple, independent and dependent relationship. Independent IV and dependent relationship. Right. So my problem is, let's say, employee engagement. Employee engagement is the problem. Right. Uh, so that is denoted by the dependent variable, and cause for a depend this particular employee engagement may be gender stereotype change, for example. Right. So this is my model concept, simple conceptual framework, and this was known and fine-tuned from literature review. Right. So how I will let you know how this was developed. Right. by moving to the next slide. uh, right, suppose this is the model, right? This is the model. Then based on this model you need to develop your literature review second chapter, right? So the content of the second chapter is based on your conceptual framework. That's the important thing, right? If you have two variables going to be tested in your research, then based on these two variables your entire literature review second chapter need to be designed, right? So I have not come to the point systematic literature review. I'm still going explaining the basics. uh, right, so then based on this conceptual framework you can simply draw, you can simply in your research dissertation thesis, what do you need to write about the write about in the literature chapter. In other words, what are the contents, right? So contents can be determined, contents can be decided based on your this conceptual framework, right? So I will provide the content for your literature review. Basically you can write the introduction. In the introduction basically you can write what is going to be done in the literature review, what are the variables that you study, and what are the sections, forthcoming sections in this particular review, and what type of articles included, how many articles included for review, and what are the variables in the conceptual framework for each variable, how many articles included. For example, if you have two variables already, right? For example, if you have two variables like this, for this variable we have included 1000 articles, for this variable we have included 1500 articles, altogether 2500 articles included for the review, right? And how you analyze those articles, from which sources you downloaded those articles, and those can be revealed when you follow a systematic literature review methodology. There is a method for reporting, and based on that you can report, you can write, right? So basically the introduction must write those information, right? What is there, what you are going to do in this particular chapter, and the basic content of the chapter, and the methodology you followed for the literature review can be explained as the introduction. Then definitions of study variables. Definitions are the, for example, if this is the model that you are going to test, simple independent dependent relationship, then obviously you can simply write the definitions of independent and dependent variable. I have given you an example. For example, this is my model, this is my model, right? So this is my model one. If you take this one, right, this one only, uh, to make it more simple. So then gender stereotypes impact employee engagement. In that, basically, I took this variable separately and review. I found investigations or literature on this available, what are the available literature during the last 50 years, from, because gender stereotype change emerged around 1970s, right? From that point afterwards till 2020 I took all the publications published in databases and reviewed, right? So then for that basically I included 75 articles for the change in gender stereotype, right? 75 articles included for the review, and and in those 75 articles I researched, I found, I searched what are the definitions used, right? And summarized in a table like this, right? In 1978 this person has described the given the definition like this, and in 2020 a totally different definition has been given. So normally definitions have been evolved. That evolution can be simply understood by simply looking at this when the definitions are chronologically ordered by referring the literature, right? So in those articles, I searched all these 75 articles and found out the definitions, right? And all these definitions chronologically ordered in this table. And by simply because when you go through each definition, uh, you can find variations in those definitions, right? So because review is a kind of identifying gaps and inconsistencies or contradictions, you can identify what are the contradictions between each definition, and how the definitions have been evolved over the time can be identified. And by referring all these, it's better if you can develop your own definition that is given. For example, if you are conducting the literature review in 2020, right, Priyashanta's definition. By simply referring all these and based on the current realities, you can try for your own definition, right? So that is kind of a review. So try to add a review part for every component that you are writing in the literature review part, rather than mentioning, because I have noticed that in most cases students write only the simply copy and paste, no review, right? So review is only the title of the second chapter, literature review, but we can find no any review there, only explanations, only descriptions of the current literature, no review, right? So for a review, obviously for a review of definitions, obviously you need to have an explanation on what is happening, what has happened, what are the components, how those things have been evolved, and what are the contradictions in each definitions. And simply you can try for another new definition based on the pattern and based on the reality, current reality, right? So that's how you need to do your work. Now definitions part is there. If you have two variables, you can simply do the review of definitions for two variables separately. Then after that, dependent variable, you can introduce the dependent variable. Dependent variable is the problem, right? So then dependent variable can be presented. Descriptives can be presented in the dependent variable. For example, for the dependent variable, I have taken uh, here 62 articles, sorry, 260 articles. For the 260 articles, normally we review the 260 articles. We can include the descriptive. Descriptive is simply something like this, something like this, right? Something like this. I will show you. I will let you know all these things later on, how to perform all these things. Right? So this table can be developed using a software, and this is a descriptive article descriptions, because the time span, if you the 260 articles published, the time duration published those 260 articles, in which duration those 260 articles published, and how many journals, and how many articles are there here. There must be 260, since if this is referred, the employee engagement is referred, but this is referring to another career indecision. I have taken one of my published articles. So in for this, I have taken 118 articles, but if it is employee engagement, this must be 218, right? So based on the data, the file, bibliometric file we are downloading from the databases, and inputting into the same file into the software, we can develop these kind of we can generate these kind of tables to denote article descriptives. So each variable you can provide article descriptives, right? So that can be provided in your research literature review section. Then after that you can determine, you can mention the determinants of y, because when you take this one, because you are presenting y variable first, right? Suppose let me to erase all these things. Suppose this is the dependent variable, right? This is the dependent variable, this is the dependent variable. Then you are writing about this that variable here, and descriptives are reported. Then determinants, what are the determinants of, what are the determinants here? The main determinant or factor is gender stereotype change. Now in these 260 articles, my task was to find out what are the determinants in all 260 investigations, and I listed down in a table what are the about uh, 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 what are the independent variables or antecedents or determinants of employee engagement in all these 260 articles, right? I made a table, right? Then it by because for this I think 260 articles, the duration I took, I believe, I think last 20 years publications was considered. Last 20 years publications was considered, and we found 260 articles there published during the last 20 years. Then during the last 20 years, we found 260 articles. Then these 260 articles, within these 260 articles, I created a table, right, summarizing all these antecedents or determinants for the employee engagement, and checked whether gender stereotype change has been a determinant in any kind of a study out of all these 260 papers, 260 investigations. Simply checked whether there was any study which has taken gender stereotype change as an antecedent or a determinant to employee engagement within these 260 papers. And I found that no study has taken gender stereotype change as an antecedent or determinant for this particular variable. And I found a gap there. And gap was published by a article like this, right? So this is a standalone review that was published as an article. Here, gender stereotype change outcomes, systematic literature review, systematically. And I have published another two articles like this. You can check leisurely all these publications. All these are index publications, and found out that no study has investigated, no study has taken this particular variable as a determinant to employee engagement, and that must be reported here, right? So you can, in a table you can provide all the determinants in published or investigated during the last 20 years in all these 260 papers, and you can make a explanation, you can provide an explanation on this table saying that there are gaps, the intended gender stereotype change has not been investigated, which indicates a gap, right? So that is the review. That is the review. In under 3.233, you can review that paragraph. You can write that paragraph, which indicates a gap. Likewise, you can do the same thing for the independent variable as well, right? For the independent variable, this is the independent variable. For the independent variable, outcome variable is the employee engagement. You do the same thing, right? You take the gender stereotype change publications published during the last 50 years, and we took 75 articles and we reviewed them, and we why we what was the intention for reviewing? In order, what was the target? Target is to find out, to check whether employee engagement has been investigated as an outcome, right? For that, we develop a table summarizing all the outcomes investigated, table like this, right? In a table like this, we summarize all the outcomes of gender stereotype change which was investigated uh, during the last 50 years in all these 2075 articles. And we found that no study has investigated uh, the employee engagement as an outcome for gender stereotype change. Then we found a gap, right? And gap was explained here, right? So review of outcomes, gaps. So likewise, if you have many variables, you can open up these kind of sections, and basically these three sections can be written based on the review findings. Ultimately, you need to do a review in the sense that you need to emphasize that there is a gap, right? Then after that, you can find the related theories, and I will let you know how to do that. Then after that, you can draw the conceptual framework in the literature chapter. So based on all these information, you can draw a conceptual framework like this, and relevant hypothesis can be developed based on the, because when you come to this point, obviously you have so many literature, right? Because you have 75 papers here, 260 papers here, and theoretical underpinnings are there, and we have some theoretical underpinnings. We found that the social role theory is a social role theory explain this particular relationship, and organizational role theory explain this particular relationship, and JDR explain this particular relationship, right? So then by simply in order to support the entire conceptual framework, we integrated the three theories. And three theories, by integrating all these three theory, we develop this particular model, right? So you can simply explain these kind of theories related to your model, and develop ultimately this kind of a conceptual framework, and that can be explained, right? And after that, so by drawing this, you can simply explain, develop hypotheses which are going to be tested empirically, right? Which are planned to be conducted empirically. In that say case, obviously you can develop hypothesis, right? So hypothesis development can be done based on the literature review at here, right? Hypothesis development, conceptual framework, and finally you can open in a separate section, you can write a separate section, the overall contribution of your literature review. In that particular section, you can draw this kind of a table, right? So you can draw this kind of a table highlighting all these gaps, right? For example, changing gender stereotypes and 75 articles, work family conflict 420 articles, perceived desirability 62 articles. Likewise, you can draw this kind of a table, and identified gaps can be highlighted here. So we have a knowledge gap. Organizational and social roles create negative impacts on employee engagement. By providing technology resources, they can be minimized. So that is the knowledge, that is the gap prevail. And by in order to fill that gap, we found this idea, we created this idea, right? Because no study investigated have investigated this one, right? No study investigated this one, right? So here gender stereotype increase employee engagement, but when the work family conflict intervenes into this particular relationship, employee engagement decreased, right? So the decreased employee engagement can be increased by this moderating effect of disruptive HR technologies. This idea has not been tested or presented anywhere else in the world. We identified or we created this one. We identified those gaps from all these reviews. These are reviews, these are reviews, these are reviews, these are review papers already published, right? Finally we developed this conceptual framework in this paper and published as a conceptual framework, concept paper, right? Then in this we suggested for future researchers to test this particular model, right? Highlighting, providing this theory. So this main knowledge gap, this kind of a knowledge gap prevail, and that gap is filled by this particular model. This gap is highlighted in this table like this, right? Organizational social roles create negative impacts. Here organization and social roles create negative impacts to the employee engagement. That negative impacts can be strengthened, the negative effect can be weakened by this positive effect. So that is the new idea that we are presenting in our research, right? So that is the knowledge gap, that is the gap that we are going to fill in our research. And theoretical gap, no holistic model found combining organizational role theory, social role theory, and JDR. And we integrated all these theories into one and proposed this idea. So that is again filling a theoretical gap. And this particular model has not been tested elsewhere, right? Empirically. Then empirical gap is there. And contextual gap, no study on this particular phenomena or on this particular area, on this particular model has been conducted anywhere in the world, including Sri Lanka, right? So these are the gaps, and these can be presented here, right? Here, overall contribution of your literature review, highlight all the gaps, right? You can draw a table something like that, this kind of a table, right? This kind of a table, and simply explain this table. This is the overall contribution of your research literature review, right? So that is the basic content of your literature review. Then finally you can provide a summary. Now my next step is how you can do this, all these things systematically, right? Not merely subjectively. You are supposed to do all these things. You are supposed to do all these things systematically. And how you can do all these things in a systematic way, right? So now I'm going to do then what you need to do. Obviously, you need to do a literature review, and I'm going to tell you how that can be done with systematic methodology. Basically, you need to identify literature, papers, or publications, and those need to be screened, right? High quality papers need to be identified. Initially, for this, right, for this, we identified nearly 1,300 papers. But when you screen using the quality criteria, inclusion and exclusion criteria, we finally retained only 75 articles, which are high quality articles, right? For this, we had earlier at the very beginning when we searched the work family conflict articles, we had nearly 10,000 papers, right? So we thoroughly reviewed all the papers against the inclusion and exclusion criteria and found this number, which are high quality papers. So likewise, we need to identify first what are the possible papers, then they need to screen them using different screening criteria, and finally include them, then included articles must be reviewed. So this is the basic process for systematic literature review, right? So now systematic literature review is this: identifying, screening, including and reviewing the possible publications on a relevant topic using systematic methodologies. For this, we have systematic prescribed scientific methodologies. For this, systematic prescribed scientific methodologies. For this one and this one as well, for all these stage, for each stage, we have scientific, systematic, logical, subject, objective methodologies. Prescribed mechanisms are there, prescribed guidelines are there, which prevent subjective activities. Because as you know, normally what you do normally is, once you get a problem to investigate, you go to the Google and search in Google, search the suppose you are going to do a research study on workplace Romans. You just go to the Google and type the workplace Romans wordings on the Google search Scholar search engine, and find the see the results, right? So then what you do normally, what you are doing is repeated here. I will show you what you are doing. Go to the Scholar. Then suppose you are going to do workplace Romans, then you have nearly 297,000 items on workplace Romans. Are you going to read all these 2,297 items? Or are you going to review all these 297,000 uh, sources on workplace Romans? No. You simply see the first page randomly, and if you think this is the best article, and download it, and few 10 to 20 articles maximum downloaded, and just go through, roughly go through the idea and say that workplace Romans has not been investigated in Sri Lanka. That is purely subjective, right? So that was done based on your own preferences, own opinion, based on your own style. That is subjective, right? So that mustn't be done. That is not allowed to do in systematic literature review. You have to follow systematic ways, right? When you follow the systematic way, you need to review all these 297,000 results, because this created by a machine without subjective intervention, right? So once the keywords are given, all the keywords available, all the articles, all the sources which mention these two words detected by the software, by the research algorithm in Google, right? And in that case, this is purely objective, systematic, and in that case you need to go through all these and find out whether what are the quality articles and what are the low quality articles, what are the relevant articles, what are the irrelevant articles, based on the inclusion criteria. Before that, we have to include the inclusion criteria, and then after that you need to review each and every article, every source, every item here, and check whether this is a possible article to include or not, right? So that is the objective criteria, objective way of doing it, not subjective way of doing it. uh, right, right. For all these there are systematic mechanisms. For each of these stages, uh, stage, you have to follow systematic, standard, prescribed guidelines to do. That's why we say the literature review is a entire systematic literature review is a systematic. Sorry, literature review is a systematic, as so many systematic methodologies and guidelines have been prescribed. Right. So now you have the definition of systematic literature review, which highlights the same thing. So we have systematic methodologies for all these for each of these methods, or for each of these stages, right? Now, what do you need to do this? Obviously you need research databases, right? So Google Scholar, people used to use Google Scholar, but Google Scholar is not a reliable source to have. There are some quality articles, but there are so many garbages. Unwanted things may be created. Google Scholar is not a database, it's a search engine, right? So once you enter the search query, search terms, obviously you get so many unwanted items, right? So which may not be relevant for your study, even though the terms are there, right? So it takes much time to review it takes much time to screen. But when you take research databases which have stored a high quality research outputs through rigorous, which has been published through uh, rigorous reviewing processes, which ensures the quality of high quality of all these outputs available in the research databases. Therefore, research databases are highly recommended for systematic literature reviews, especially to search articles. And reference management software, again, doing references or citations manually is really difficult, because you have to handle so many research papers. Suppose if you get 10,000 articles, finally retain 420 articles. In that case, you need to cite all these papers. All these findings need to be cited. So in that case, doing all these things manually is really difficult. Maybe really a mess. Maybe so many possibilities to create so many errors, right? So then reference management software, using the reference management software is really mandatory, essential, to avoid difficulties. And also grammar correction tool, mostly Grammarly can be used, and paraphrasing tool can be used, because in some cases we can use AI chatbots to create some ideas in some places, and those can be paraphrased, and sometimes Grammarly has the AI option nowadays. Automatically, when we are writing a particular sentence using the AI, the Grammarly corrects the sentences. In that case, once the paper is finalized and uploaded into Turnitin, it detects AI content creation. So obviously, in order to avoid that, so we need to paraphrase that. Then analysis tools like PostViewer and BiblioShiny are there to analyze the bibliometric informations on the downloaded articles, right? So those are the basic tools needed to do the systematic literature review. And the way how you can download and use the reference management software, there are basically two. We have so many reference management tools, but according to my experience, the best tool is given here. Out of these two, the best I recommend this one, Zotero, which is free software, open source, and at the same time which is really user friendly and very easy to use, and at the same time very simple. uh, 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 Therefore, I'm recommending this to use if you have not yet adapted to a software tool for your reference management. This one is the ideal, and how to use it and how to install, and all these things are given in these videos, and all these videos are in my YouTube channel. You can subscribe. All these research related videos are available in the channel. Simply you can hit this link and watch the relevant videos and practice how to use and how to install and use all these things. If you're willing to manually, this video link provides the explanations. and also database access, especially Scopus and Web of Science. If you have the access to these two databases, you can do a wonderful systematic literature review, right? But unfortunately, I don't think that we have. You have these access to these databases. Almost all state universities having a problem to access this databases with the dollar crisis we have, right? But anyway, if you have friend outside Sri Lanka, pursuing their degrees in foreign universities, you can get the help from them to access these databases. Uh, Mostly, so if you can access these two type databases, again I'm telling you can do wonderful things, right? So there are so many facilities, very easy, very quickly you can perform the necessary analysis with these data, because data produced, articles can be really very nice, very good articles can be downloaded, their bibliometric informations can be downloaded and they can be inserted or they can be entered into the relevant software for the analysis, and analysis results created very quickly and they can be interpreted accordingly, and finally you can write the findings very quickly. Then Google Scholar, and you don't have to worry about it. If you don't have the Scopus and Web of Science access, then Google Scholar is the option we have. And you Google, I have found a new shortcut for that. That's why I ask you to use the Zotero. Then simply we can download all these articles through Zotero, Google data through Zotero, and we have another database called, this is a database, this is a search engine, and we have only one free database which is called lens.org, and through which again you can download whatever the articles that you want, and this database files are supported. The files downloaded from this database really supports the softwares that we are going to use, right? So lens.org is a good database, but again this has some problems. Unnecessary data, unwanted data, unwanted articles are created or generated once the search query is given like Google Scholar. But you don't have to worry. We can do a systematic literature review with those two databases. And I have, since in order to save our time, I have given those all these information in a separate video. But I'm focusing today to do the systematic literature review with paid databases, Scopus and Web of Science. And we have another, I have given you another YouTube video I have done for another university. All the recording have been uploaded into the YouTube channel, and the channel link has been given. And leisurely you can watch how to perform systematic literature review with Google or Lens.org data. And reference management and AI use. Again, this particular session was done for another university. I believe it was done for the Colombo University PhD students, and then how reference management can be used, and how AI can be used for academic writing is explained. And this one again this is available on public. Obviously, you can watch leisurely and learn the things given here. Right. So these are the recommended articles, and all these articles are systematic literature reviews. If you are willing to publish systematic literature review, your second chapter has a separate article, and these are the guidelines. You can follow these articles and learn the way how these articles have been developed, and read those articles, especially the methodology section. There are so many justifications for methodological decisions given in those articles, and cite them along with these articles. Please cite these articles in your papers when you are writing your papers, because for the methodology section I have given so many justifications for methodology selections, and those the citations in my articles and the citations in these articles uh, can be cited, right? So if you cite all these things, obviously so these becomes common papers for systematic literature reviews. Refer them and cite them. Right. So systematic literature review is explained in this slide. Obviously, as I explained, systematic literature review uh, is a literature review methodology which is purely quantitative and uh, follows a structured approach, which is a rigorous methodology and which intends to provide a synthesis of uh, current knowledge, obviously. Synthesis, overview of a current knowledge. The main intention of a systematic literature review is to provide an overview of the current knowledge. When you provide an overview of the current knowledge, simply by that, or by observing, by analyzing that overview, simply we can identify the gaps. Right? The way how identify gaps are identified will let you know just after a few minutes. Right. So this is the steps. These are the steps to be followed. Since I'm focusing on literature review chapter, you can start with third step. But if you are trying to publish as a separate standalone literature review paper, you can start with the step one, right? So formulating the research problem, in the sense that formulating a problem for your literature review, right? So these two steps again needed for the specially needed for an article that is going to be published in a for a literature review which is going to be published in a journal as a separate standalone article, right? But that is not the focus for today. We are going to write a literature review chapter, right? So for that, once the problem has been identified, conceptual framework has been designed, and we have, obviously, outline has been already determined, right? Outline of the content of the literature review chapter, right? Then what we need to do is, because we have clear conceptual framework, right, having independent, dependent, moderating or mediating variables, then clearly we know what are the variables we have, right? So then based on that, we can simply start searching the literature, right? So my advice is to take, suppose if in this case, kind of in this kind of a literature conceptual framework, suppose your framework is something like this, right? Something like this. Simple moderation effect is there, right? So how you do the literature review, how you search, are you taking, are you going to, take all these three variables in a single search? No. The best is take uh, review, take one variable at a time to review rather than taking all. Why? Because if this model has not been tested elsewhere, you can't find any article in the databases, right? So here the best thing is to take one variable at a time and do a literature review, and you can identify definitions, you can identify determinants, you can identify outcomes, and simply you can identify gaps, right? So take this one uh, and search the possible, or search the current investigations on this particular area and identify the definitions, outcomes, determinants, and simply identify gaps. Take this one separately. So like you did for these things, the same thing can be done, right? So my advice is to take each variable separately for a review. Simply you can do, if you have three variables in your conceptual framework, do three separate systematic literature reviews, right? So now searching literature, right? Before searching the literature, you have to develop a protocol, right? This is the protocol. In that protocol, there is a prisma guideline. Prisma is preferred reporting items for systematic literature reviews and meta-analysis. This is a standard we are supposed to use, because this is a kind of a standard organization developed for systematic literature reviews, and which prescribe guidelines to maintain the subjectivity throughout all systematic literature reviews done around the globe, right? Because systematic, as the name implies, all the systematic literature reviews must prevent biasness and subjectivity and ensure the systematic nature in all the studies. For that, they have prescribed a standard framework. When you are going to do a systematic literature review, there are prescriptions, there are guidelines, there are checklists to be followed, right? So that is prescribed, those are given by the Prisma organization. And article selection method was done using the Prisma guidelines. And search strings, for example, if you are going to do a green human resource management, because I have taken this review protocol from a study that we conducted on green human resource management. And year range, this is the inclusion criteria, article inclusion criteria. We included the articles published between this year range, and the articles published in different subject area were taken, right? We took all the publications in different subject areas considered, and only we considered the publications published in English, and keywords, especially the articles having these keywords included, others excluded, and articles published in academic journals included, and articles published or investigations or research studies done on empirical basis and meta-analysis basis only included, all the others excluded. For example, we have conference papers, we have obviously we may have generated reports, data sets, web pages, blog post, all these excluded, because all these having a question of reliability of the content. Books, for example, a book, right? There may be so many books on green human resource management which was excluded, because books can be written by anyone, right? Which are opinions of people. But when you publish a journal article which goes through a rigorous process, right? In high quality journals, for example, right? Which ensures journal articles obviously ensure, journal empirical articles ensure the high quality. There are strong citations, justifications to include the empirical studies published in academic journals recommended for systematic literature reviews. There are strong citations, right? So then, by following those strong citations and recommendations, we decided to include articles which are journal articles published, journal articles in the sense that empirical research, empirical and meta-analysis, because empirical is empirical quantitative, meta-analysis is quantitative, which ensures high quality of findings, right? And these outputs were included, right? Published in journal articles included. And methodological quality was assessed, because even the empirical study was conducted. Suppose we found an article which is empirically conducted. Data was collected empirically, and findings have been created uh, based on the systematic analysis using mathematical techniques. But we believe the methodology followed is not reliable, may not be reliable, right? So methodology followed can be assessed using the guidelines, because there are so many guidelines to assess methodological quality of an article, right? So the grade system, Cochrane criteria and grade system is one such, and there are so many prescriptions or so many guidelines given by the researchers. There are norms, accepted norms to assess the methodological quality of an article, and by using such assessments we can simply assess the methodological quality, right? So we use grade system for this particular review, and grade system having several questions to answer, yes or no answer on the methodology. And if yes, suppose we have five questions, and if we got yes answers for all these five questions, then we included that article. If any no article, no answer is received for any five questions out of any five questions, uh, any question out of the all five questions, then we reject that article. So right, likewise we have these kind of grading systems. We follow this grade system for assessing the methodological quality, right? And the databases, these are the databases we used. An analysis method is this one, and reporting structure, the final research article was written based on, because this was done to develop an article for a standalone research, and for the structuring and final manuscript writing and manuscript structured was basically done based on the Prisma guidelines. And search strings are there. These are the terms that was included in the database search engine with Boolean operators, and those are the points representing the review protocol. Right. So this is the review protocol. By using the review, this is another review protocol, same as previous. And using the review protocol, we can start searching the literature. Now I will show you how to do that in a database. Right, I'm using Scopus first. Scopus database is this one. Suppose I'm going to conduct green human resource management. Green human resource management, right? And this must be entered like this within quotation. And there may be so many similar words. Some researchers might use GHRM in their title, or some researchers might use green HRM. You need to find out the synonyms for a particular terminology and enter all these possibilities, all these variations, in order to detect so many articles, right? So now within bracket, if you have to words, then put them in quotation mark to detect the two words as a one word, right? Now search. I think there is a problem of accessing this database. While it is being generated, we can access the Scope Web of Science database, right? Go to this one. What happened? Have to select Scopus. Right, we have Scopus here, and we have to search again. will take some time. Now, while it is being generated, we can search the same thing, green human resource management in the Web of Science. O GHRM O green HRM. Right now we can search. We have nearly 1069 papers available in this database on green human resource management. Right here, I think it's having problem of generating. Scopus having a problem of generating. Let me refresh it again. Right, got it. We have 1378 documents available in this database, Scopus. Right now, initially we got 1378 in Scopus and 1069 in Web of Science. Now what we need to do is we have Prisma diagram, right? So this is the Prisma flow diagram which has been prescribed to show how we include identified articles, screened articles, and included articles for our review. This is a prescribed. This is a format that we all researchers must follow, right? So this is the standard format given by the Prisma organization. And then since you access these two databases, you can write initially Scopus having 1378 papers available, and Web of Science having 1069 simultaneously. While performing the searching, you need to fill this graph, right? So we forget about these other two databases. These other databases, we delete this for now. Now then we can start screening using the database functionalities, right? So because on the left in the database we have a menu to the left, and this menu is for screening the articles, right? Screening criteria is given, which are almost similar to our screening inclusion criteria, right? So these are our inclusion criteria, and so same criteria are there in the database, right? So year range, here you can see the first article published in this journal, in this database, is in 2008. Then we can decide, we can take all these publications, right? We can take all the publications in 2000 from 2008 to 2025. Or if you want, suppose in the during the last 50 years, last 20 years, last 5 years, you can select all these things, then this number comes, right? So but my decision is to include all these publications, study all these publications starting from 2008, because this year is the first article on GHRM has been published by Web of Science, right? So I decide to keep all these rather than refining. Then document type, because as I said earlier, journal articles which are quantitative, empirical, are highly recommended for systematic literature reviews. In that case, I decide to, because my inclusion criteria says that we have to include journal articles, right? Journal articles which are empirical. So a particular article, whether a particular article empirical or not, cannot be understood at this point, right? But simply journal article can be identified because the name is given, right? So then select this one, and we have to exclude all these other types, because all these other types indicates, for example, if you take an early access as well, normally early access papers are journal articles. Data set, we don't find any idea from a data set, especially finding. Meeting, maybe sometimes so many biased things, not related informations may be there. And dissertation thesis is not already published, and maybe sometimes those are known as gray literature. Those sometimes the quality of those outputs may be questionable, right? Patents we don't want, corrections, other, those things I think not needed. And we have some questions, we have some problems with the reliability of those outputs. Then obviously, since we have strong recommendations to include articles, by following those recommendations with strong citations, which are having high impact citations, uh, by following those rule of thumbs, obviously we can decide, because already we have decided that in the protocol, and we can follow the same thing to, to decide to include only these articles, right? So all the others need to be excluded. In that case, we need to report all these review article 69, data set 46, something like that. We have to count all these things with the reason, with the title, and include here, right? And include here. Excluded by year, we didn't take selected all from year range 2008 to 2008 to 2024, 25, right? Then have to delete this one. Excluded by subject area, we decided to include all because we didn't exclude any article. We decided to take all these articles here, right? uh, Cancelled, sorry. We decided to, now we take all these. Now here we decided here, sorry, we are talking about this one. And now review articles, we are deciding to take this one, these two only, journal articles only. In that case, we need to exclude all these other things. Review article 69, we need to report here review articles excluded by document type. Here we might have review articles. If there is no, we can simply say review articles, comma, bracket, open bracket, n equals 69, something like that. You need to report all these things. Conference papers 4, books chapters, likewise. All these headings need to be written there with the number, without missing anything, and finally refine. Right? Then it was limited to 871 articles. Then we can, the next important thing is language. We decided according to our inclusion criteria. Here is our inclusion criteria. Suppose this one is the inclusion criteria, and we decided to include articles published in English, which means that we have articles in other languages. Here you see Korean, Portuguese, Spanish, Chinese, Russian, right? So we decide to include all these. Others are excluded, and count these 3 to 5, 7, 8, 9, 9, 10. 10 papers are excluded here, and that must be reported in the non-English papers. How many? 10, 12 papers, right? Altogether 12 papers. excluded. Now then, done, right? So all initial screening related to the Web of Science done. Now we need to export this as a bibliometric file like this. Now save collections, export. I have already exported for you because I did a session on the same topic in the morning for NSBM, and I did the same thing here, right? Exported file was saved here in this NSBM test Web of Science, right? So this is the original file exported, which has 1006. Finally, it was like something like 861 papers, right? That is, this is that file. Now go to the Scopus and do the same thing, right? Select the individual and check whether what is the first year. In this one as well, 2008 is the first publication. There are two publications done for the first time in the Scopus as well. Then we can decide the year range as 2008 to 2024, right? All the papers included. Then subject area, we decided to include all publications published in all subject areas. No need to exclude any other area. Suppose if you want to study the publications, green HRM publications in business management and accounting, take this one and report all the other areas in the Prisma framework somewhere here, right? Somewhere here with the reasons. Then document type here as well, we are limiting to articles and others, book chapter 149, conference papers 105, right? So these need to be reported with the number here, right? Book chapters 109, something like that you need to report. I'm not going to record all these things, write all these things. You can see how I have reported the numbers for an earlier research. The same thing need to be done, right? Same thing need to be done. You have to write all these things with these numbers there, here. Now limit. Now the final article came down to 1017. Then after that we need to find this one, filter by language, exclusion by language. We are supposed to take only English papers. Let's need to count the other, how many articles published in other languages. 7, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15. 15 articles excluded. Altogether, how many? 15, 25 articles. 27 articles excluded as non-English. Right? Now, there is no other important exclusion criteria according to our inclusion criteria. Then we can export the final output as a bibliometric file, CSV file. That is the final retained articles 1004, right? So we can export as a CSV 1 to, again I forgot the number, 1004. From 1 to 1004. I have to check all these boxes and export. Again I have exported the same file like this in the morning session, and I'm not going to export it because my storage will be full and you have that file, right? Scopus file, right? Now what you can do is open the Scopus file, and this is the original file, right? This is the bibliometric file which contains all these bibliometric information of each and every article of all these 1004 articles, right? What are the bibliometric informations? Author, title, year, journal published, volume, issue, DOI number, affiliations, the department or the working place of the authors, abstract of the research paper, author keywords, and the references used, right? So all these informations are there in this particular file. This is the data file, right? Data relating to the each article given here. This is called bibliometric file, CSV file, Excel sheet, another, uh, if you call the same thing by another name, this is called a CSV file, bibliometric CSV file. Right now, we need to merge because we have articles in Scopus as well as Web of Science. Sometimes the journal we publish may be Scopus index. At the same time, the same journal may be Web of Science index. Then you have a possibility uh, to publish the same article in two databases, store the same article in two databases, which means that there may be duplications, right? Duplicated items are there, right? Those must be excluded. Same article might be in the Web of Science as well as Scopus, right? So those must be identified and removed, and to do that we need to merge these two files into one, right? Take the Scopus file as a source file and open the Web of Science and highlight Web of Science and highlight the most important columns. Author column is essential, title column is essential, source title column is essential, because we need to merge, we need to take copy all these each column and copy it to the relevant column, respective relevant column, corresponding column in the Scopus database output. Then DOI number is essential, then publication year is essential, and there is a problem with this output because I'm using a foreign university's access details. They haven't paid. I think they are having a payment problem with this database. Due to that reason, they have all this company Web of Science have restricted to generate some data, as you can see here. That's why we have blanks here, because the administrators of this database have restricted to generate some fields, right? So abstract, here you see there are spaces. We don't get information in these in these columns because uh, due to the maybe I don't know the reasons why. I guess that this kind of problems occur due to the payment subscriptions, right? So they have limited the access and services offered by the database due to these reasons, right? So you don't have to worry about it. We don't have to worry about it, but we need to anyway need, because this is essential, abstract column is essential regarding each and every research item. We need to fill this abstract column, so that can be done manually by going to the relevant article and copy the relevant abstract and paste here. Go to the relevant article using DOI number and take the abstract and copy here, right? So until you come to the end, you have to do the same thing manually, because at this point we don't have to do anything. Otherwise you can contact a very good a friend having the full option database access, especially to the web of science, right? We have the all the facilities with the Scopus in this data in this access detail with these access details, but we have problems with the web of science. That's why we have blank fields here, right? So those things need to be copied, right? For example, I'm copying article title. All these yellow colored columns need to be copied, right? Copy and paste the corresponding column title here, D column. To separate the two databases, you can mark something like this. In D column, you can paste. Here again, you have to copy the same thing, copy and paste, right? Wrap text, and you can just resize the columns, column height, sorry, column height, sorry, row height to 15, right? So finally you get the same size. Now likewise you need to copy all these yellow colored columns in the web of science and paste the relevant corresponding uh, columns in the Scopus file, right? For the year, take the year copied and pasted here. For the source title, take get the source title column copied and pasted in the F column, right here, from this point afterwards, as I did earlier for the title, right? So all these fields need to be filled, especially the yellow colored columns, right? Then after that you need to find out the duplicates, right? So how you can do that is, go to the titles column. Where is title column, highlight that one, and using the simple Excel functionality you can identify the all the reds are duplicates, right? Start deleting duplicates from the web of science, and first count the duplicates: 1 2 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12, something like that. You come to the end. Until you come to the end, count these all these red cells, and suppose you got 300, right? So you got 300 duplicates, and all these must be deleted, right? All these must be deleted because they are duplicates, right? Here by simply selecting all reds, you can delete them. All reds, delete them, right? All reds, delete them, right? So likewise you need to do all the same thing repeatedly uh, until you get these red colors unchecked, which means that in order to disappear all these reds, until these rates are disappeared. You need to do this all this each step repeatedly, right? So once all these rates deleted, automatically all these rates are disappeared. Right, done. Sorry, so this that is given here, that must be given here. Suppose 300 duplicates were there, then 300 must be written here. Now you can deduct all these numbers, right? So here altogether 1378, 1069 are added, and from that you can deduct 300 and you get this much, this number, and from this number you can deduct, you can add all these numbers and put here, and this number is deducted from this number, right? And this is the automatic screening. And again at the same time, this 532 articles manually reviewed abstract, each and every abstract need to be reviewed manually, right? So here you have the abstract, you have the abstract, and abstract need to be reviewed. Why? Because you need to assess the methodological quality. You need to assess the methodology, and sometimes you need to find out what are the theories used in each study, right? Theory, because these are needed for your analysis. Sometimes because theoretical gap need to be identified, and sometimes you need to identify the industry gap. For example, you are going to conduct the GHRM research in banking industry, and you need to find out whether how many studies have been conducted in the banking industry, right? So the industry in which the sample has been drawn, industry, right? So these are the newly added paragraphs, sorry, not paragraphs, columns, right? And these can be filled while reviewing the abstract, right? So initially you review each abstract to fill the methodology, right? Normally I'm using because as I said earlier, I'm using a grade system to assess the methodological quality according to the here as you can see, uh, right? As you can see here, methodological quality, there is a grading system, assessment system, but you are not mandatory to use these kind of things at your convenience. You can use your own methodological assessment criteria if that is justifiable, right? Normally I'm using in some cases I'm using the standard grading systems, but for now I'm telling you that you can use your own assessment criteria. For example, sample size can be taken as an assessment criteria, and analysis method, quantitative analysis method, right? Whether it has used correlation, regression, structural equation modeling, or what do you call this, control trials, right? Any quantitative methodology has been used, need to be checked, and whether it is a cross-sectional or longitudinal study can be checked by referring the methodology section in each abstract. But in some abstracts, those informations are not mentioned, right? Not in detail. But in that case, you need to go to the full article and read the entire methodology section to find these informations, right? To find these informations and write here. Suppose, for example, in this study here, you can see, just go through this. Uh, Here 570 Vietnamese, and also you can write the country, right? Country of study, a particular study conducted, country, right? So this study has been conducted in Vietnam. In which industry? Vietnam. Vietnam. Right, spelling is not correct. Vietnam. Then industry, simply by reading through, you can identify which industry. If this is not mentioned, if that is not mentioned here, you can go to the direct full article and find out which industry this has been taken to investigate. And here, as you can see, 570 sample size is 570, 570, which is more than enough, right? A big sample. Then uh, 570 uh, uh, hospitality workers across 92 hotels, and in between, rated between 3, right? So basic sample size is 570. And what type of analysis method has been used? The partial least square structural equation modeling. Smart PLS has been used. PLSM has been used, right? So you can simply mention that to denote, because if partial least square PLSM has been used, that is purely uh, quantitative PLSM. And I think that this abstract does not mention any data to denote that any information to denote that the data collection was done in 2 point of time. In that case, we can decide this study has been conducted based on the cross-sectional basis, right? Cross-sectional study, longitudinal is not there, right? So that's like this, you can fill all these fields until you come to the end. And suppose this one, you find that this is a qualitative study. Since that is not our target for inclusion, then obviously you can delete that study, right? Delete, because that is a qualitative study, right? So here you can see how many articles deleted, right? So viewpoint papers, which is not a quantitative study. Concept papers, 4 papers deleted, which is not a quantitative study. Qualitative case study, 4 papers deleted, which is again not a quantitative study. Qualitative reviews, it's not an empirical quantitative study, right? So those found from that analysis by referring the methodology section, right? So then we can deduct all these numbers, and finally we can get this much, this number. This is the final number included for the review, and this must be presented in your methodology section in your research paper, in your let's say in the introduction, for example, in your literature review chapter, you can present this, because when you present this one, obviously the reader can really understand you have done a big work, right? If you have done, if you have used two research, two variables, and two similar this type of diagrams need to be presented, can be presented, because you have done you, as I advise, you have done literature review separately for each variable. If you have two constructs in your conceptual framework, two literature reviews have been done, right? For that, two similar the same diagrams must be pasted or must be included in 2 times relating to your search query regarding the variable that you have taken to the study, right? Two figures uh, can be mentioned or can be included. Right, so this is inclusion. Now then we can go to the analysis. Now we have finalized, we have now at this point 283 articles, right? So I have a file finalized already for you. this one. And now you can use R biblioshiny. This is the R to generate the basic uh, descriptives, right? So R, this is the R platform console. Bibliometrics library. Bibliometrics, bibliometrics, bibliometrics. I think library. Bibliometrics. Enter. Right, so you can watch my YouTube videos how to install this console and how to use all these things, clearly explained in my YouTube videos, because within this limited, very limited 2.5 hours, it's really difficult to explain all these things. I am just showing the way how you can do it, but if you want to learn it more on this, I need at least more than 20 hours to cover the entire thing, right? So I'm just showing the way how you can do it. Now biblioshiny is the software which is an online software for bibliometric analysis, and this software is used to generate basic descriptive results of the articles that we have included for the review. Descriptive results, right? So you can perform different analysis, and I will show you in order to save the time. This particular diagram was created using the R biblioshiny annual article production. Annually during this year range, how many how the articles have been published. That whether it be with 10. According to this diagram, we can see an increasing trend of publication, right? So this one, how the citations received by each article, we have decreased citations, right? Decreasing trend of citations, and this table, right? So this table can be created using our biblioshine, and these type of basic informations about the article set, and also this tab, this output, and how many journals published how many articles, right? These are the journals which publish the number of articles on carrier indecision. And this was extracted in one of my article on carrier indecision, and these type of basic information on that article set can be generated, and those can be inserted and explained here, right? As I said earlier, explained here under the descriptives article profile, right, for each variable in your model. Now this is the biblioshiny. Now we need to import data, import raw files. We are supposed to use Scopus files, browse 25, this one, start. It takes much time because we have large number of articles, right? So we have the report on the quality of data available in this file, right? So all the informations are excellent available in this file, then we don't have to worry about it. Then we can perform the analysis, right? Necessary analysis. Right now we can have an overview here, main information, right? So we can have a table, and that table, right? So this is the table that I did show you earlier, right? So this is the table that I did show you, right here, this one. You can edit this the same table as you want, right? We have unnecessary information, time span 2012 to 2021, journals 89, documents 211, right? Annual growth rate 52, right? So those are the basic informations about the article that we have included for our review. And these authors, 574 authors, uh, written those to 89 articles, sorry, 211 articles, right? So this file can be copied, this table can be copied, right? Simply we can include into a report, and annual scientific production, right? Another table, another graph can be created, and average citations per year, here average citations per year, right? So likewise you can do, you can generate basic informations about the article, and various other analyses are there, but the problem is I don't have enough time to tell you. But in all of my articles I have created, I have used the R Biblioshiny to create this descriptive outputs, right? So those are the basic descriptive outputs that I have created, right? In all of my articles, right? Those finally can be extracted as a file, separate report into a separate location, and open that, right? Open that, and simply you can copy all these outputs here. This one is the basic information, and simply you can copy all these and paste uh, the place on the, you can paste where you want, on your paper, on your manuscript. And this is the annual scientific production. This graph can be copied and saved on the place that you want. Again, click on this, right click, copy and paste where you want, right? So this is how those outputs are extracted onto your manuscript, right? And those can be included in the description section in your literature review chapter. And finally, while after including all these outputs, you can explain these paragraphs nearly in 208 words maximum allowed. That is a standard maximum allowed for maximum allowed words for explaining a graph or a table is maximum 280 words, right? So that's normally practiced by journals. Right, done. Now basic analysis, right? Using Vosweaver. Vosweaver is used for basic analysis. I will use WasWeaver software. You can download the WasWeaver using the web, right? So when you type WasWeaver in Google, then you are dragged into the WasWeaver site, and there is an option on the web page to the right, uh, download button. Once that is download, depending on your operating system, you have different versions. If you are using what do you call this, Windows option is there, Windows exe file is there. And if you are using Mac supported file is there. You can extract, uh, download, and by clicking them, simply by using the normal procedure of installing a particular software, you can install that software into your computer, right? Was we were Where is that? Downloads. Was we were We have this as well. This is again a free software. Right, this is the software already open. Now use uh, check the second button, press next. Again check the second button, press next. Use the Scopus as a source file and select the relevant file. Right, so basic, and there are so many other analysis, but basic analysis, might main task that depends on your analysis. Selection of your analysis is dependent on your research objectives, but here we are developing our literature review chapter. In that, our main focus is to identify what are the commonly investigated areas and what are the least common investigated areas, right? So that is the main objective, right? So in that case, the ideal analysis is keyword concurrence analysis. From that, we can identify commonly investigated areas, and once the commonly investigated areas identified, we can simply identify the gaps, right? So then I perform the co-occurrence keyword analysis, and I set the occurrence one and above in articles. Keywords occurred one and above in articles, right? So these are the keywords, and unwanted keywords, maybe sometimes some researchers use put their own country as a keyword, which is not needed. And unwanted keywords may be their countries names, analysis methods, right? PLSM, those can be Jordan, right? Those are not needed because our task is to identify key themes investigated, right? So these type of things can be unchecked. I'm not going to do all these things. Roughly, I'm showing the way how you can do it, right? ISO 9000, those unwanted things can be unchecked. And suppose this is the final, and press OK, finish. Right, you have this kind of a network. you have this kind of a network. This network says a lot, so many things, right? When you interpret this network, you can make so many findings, right? So let's see one by one. And when you click this one, you have 43, nearly 43 clusters, right? All these keywords have been categorized into 43 clusters, 43 groups. And the first group is the first cluster having these nearly 31 keywords categorized in the first cluster, right? So when you click this one, age is in the first cluster, denoted by red, right? Red is the first cluster. Then second cluster is the green, right? So here you can see green nodes, right? So then nearly we have 43 clusters, and what cluster denotes, what a cluster means, right? So these things can be explained like this by taking another example, right? I'm not going to use the same output because that is as you can see, this is a huge complex diagram. I'm going to use a simplified version of it because that I have already used the simplified version in the PowerPoint presentation here, right? This one, right? On the same topic, green human resource management, you have cluster, you have a cluster here, right? So in this cluster you have 5 keywords categorized in a one cluster, denoted by a red, by the red color. And we have another cluster denoted by a color which is green, and 3 keywords have been clustered into this cluster. And you have another cluster having 2 keywords denoted by blue, right? So different colors, the nodes in different colors denote a cluster, right? A cluster must represent a theme. Now our task is to find out what is that theme, how you can identify that, because the keywords are these, because the cluster, in the cluster keywords are given. From the keywords itself we can't identify a theme. We need to find out the findings related, associated with each keyword by referring each and every article in the CSV file. How you can do that? For example, if you take the environmental knowledge. Now, a line connecting environmental knowledge and green human resource management indicates a meaning, right? So here, which means that this line connecting these nodes indicates the relationship, indicate a relationship, which means that green human resource management is related to the environmental knowledge, right? Now in this case you need to find out which kind of a relationship is there, whether it is an outcome of a green human resource management or whether it is a determinant of green human resource management is not clearly given here, right? It's only mentioning that there is a connection between these two, right? But we can't identify what type of a connection, whether it is a strong connection, whether a strong connection can also be identified. When you look at this one, right, there is a very, very thick line, right, and big nodes, right? Higher the size of the node, bigger the size of the node, higher the occurrences in articles, which means that this has been occurred in the article set frequently and indicating most frequently investigated areas, right? Because this has been investigated very limitedly, because node sizes are very small, at the same time links are very thin. But here node sizes are very big compared to this, and the line is thicker than this, which indicates mostly investigated out of the old, let's say 200 papers. In the old 200 papers, most studies have concerned this area, investigated this area, right? So mostly investigated area is this one. uh, that can be concluded from this diagram. and and now what I was telling about it, not that, right? So we need to find out the connection, right? If you take environmental knowledge, go to the relevant CSV file, right? Go to the relevant CSV file here, right? This is the relevant CSV file, like this, right? This is the relevant CSV file abstract. When you click the abstract, right, and first author keywords. Now in the author keywords, control F, control find, environmental knowledge need to be searched. Environmental knowledge need to be searched. Maybe sometimes I misspelled. No, here, knowledge. Again misspelled. Right, let's take another example. Let's take knowledge. Here we have knowledge. Next one, sorry, not this one. We have to highlight it first, or the keywords. Knowledge, we are searching environmental knowledge. Here, green knowledge, you need to find an article which investigated environmental knowledge, right? Green knowledge, right? So like this, you need to find an article which investigated on environmental knowledge, right? So I can't find an article, but you need to find, suppose this is the article, right? So that is given here in this slide, right? The same thing, environmental knowledge. Press the control find and press find next, and once that is done, you find the first article here highlighted, right? Then read the abstract. Read the abstract of this article and try to find the results. Results are mentioned somewhere here. Further, the findings are the results. Findings reveal that employees' environmental knowledge, because this is the keyword, right? Environmental knowledge can magnify the indirect impact of ethical leadership via GHRM. Ethical leadership via GHRM, right? Through GHRM on green behavior, right? Then what is the role here? Environmental knowledge. Environmental knowledge can magnify means increase, right? Which means that this is a moderating variable, right? So here, when this model is moderated by, especially this relationship GHRM-GB relationship, green behavior relationship, can be moderated by environmental knowledge. This is the finding, right? This need to be summarized on a paper, on your paper, this finding only, and cite the relevant author, because this has been found by Ahmed, right? And cite it with you need to insert the citation. Write this sentence and insert the citation on your paper, right? Like this. Here, Ahmed, right? So you are writing about the environmental knowledge, and until you come to the last item, you need to do the same thing, right? So you need to search all the publications how environmental knowledge has been investigated, and do the same thing for all the items having the environmental knowledge investigated, and add some writing like this, main findings into this particular paragraph, right? And finally, by reading, you can rewrite the same paragraph by correcting the grammar and pattern and everything. And I have finalized this paragraph. In most studies, environmental knowledge has been the moderating variable in various relationships, right? So they include ethical leadership via GHRM. This is the first finding by that has been done by this person. And second finding, GHRM practices on environmental orientation, which means that GHRM practices on environmental orientation is moderated by environmental knowledge in the second. That was done by this author. And green transformational leadership on pro environmental behavior through GHRM, right? So now this is how green transformational leadership, here pro environment, green transformational leadership on pro environmental behaviors, through green HRM is moderated by environmental knowledge, right? So this is how, right, when you go through other findings, the same similar type of findings found by other authors. And this is what I found regarding the environmental knowledge. So likewise, you need to do you need to do the same. You need to create same similar type of paragraph for other keywords. You need to search the green behavior keyword, the green behavior which has been investigated by different articles, and summarize the findings relating to the green behavior, especially highlighting what is the connection between green human resource management and green behavior in a separate paragraph, like that, like this, right? For the ethical leadership, again another paragraph. For this green values, another paragraph. Nearly you can create 4 paragraphs, right? So we all these paragraph highlight the connection between these two variables, between the connection between the connection between the two keywords, right? So in this case, green behavior, green human resource management, ethical leadership, green human resource management, right? So the connection between these keywords and the green human resource management and their related findings need to be summarized in a paragraph, in 4 paragraphs, and those 4 paragraphs need to be repeatedly gone through to identify whether there is a common pattern, whether a similar whether what do you call this, whether a common thing highlighted in all these paragraphs. Then I went through several times, so many times, and identified a common pattern, because all these common theme, right? Because that was done to identify a common theme, because cluster represent a common theme, right? So here I created based on the readings by several times. I understood that green behavior is a psychological thing. Ethical leadership is a psychological thing. Environmental knowledge is a psychological thing. Green values is a psychological thing. Now I gave a name complying with the theory, uh, this name particularly, green psychological climate, right? So the red cluster highlights the green psychological climate, right? And the green cluster, when you at a glance, right, you can see HR practices, human resource performance management with green, recruitment with green, selection with green, training with green, right? So green practices are there. Then we can say that green HRM practices. Common theme is the green HRM practices. And we can see environmental performance and competitive advantage by referring through the created paragraph of the findings related to each keyword. Two paragraphs. I understood that these paragraphs highlight environmental and non-environmental outcomes of green HRM. Right. So then I gave that name as a theme. Right? So those are the three themes created. Out of the 231 papers published during the last 20 years, I found that only three themes addressed. Only three themes addressed. These are the themes addressed by the researchers. Then so many other things highlighted which has not been addressed. For example, if you take this one, green recruitment, there are so many, nearly 14 human resource management functions. IR, industrial relations, career management, discipline management, right? There are so many things, but which has not been tested with green concept, which is a gap. If you are going to if you are planning to do a research on green industrial relations, this table can be produced and this diagram can be produced, right, and say that there is a gap, right, because that word is not there, because we included 231 articles during the we surveyed the last 20 years research and found that no study has taken that variable. That is a gap, right? And all these are relating to this diagram. Now we are moving to the next diagram, which is the blue diagram mentioned to the right. This one, right? So this one clearly says the gaps, right? Even this highlights the gap, and this one clearly formally communicates the gap by the color codes, right? So color code says different meanings, right? This is the network visualization, and this one, and this one is called uh, density visualization, right? Keyword co-occurrence density visualization, and the meanings are given here, right? Node size, I explained this one. Link strength, I explained this one. And cluster, I explained this one. Cluster denotes a group and obviously reflects a theme. And I'm going to explain this one. Density visualization is this paragraph. This particular diagram is called by density visualization, and there are different colors. I can show you how to generate that using the Voss River. So this is the network diagram, and by using this density option, you can change the color codes here by using the rainbow color. The same similar diagram can be created, right? So you see different color codes are there, right, which denotes so many meanings, right? The similar one given here in small size, right? So red or orange or yellow, depending on the color codes that we select, right? So normally red color, according to this rain, when we select the rainbow colors, red denotes, right, red or orange. The by default color is orange or yellow, but when we select the rainbow colors, it automatically turned into red color, right? So like this, red color indicates the areas with a high density of keywords. These are hot zones where many keywords co-occur frequently in articles. Hot zones means which has been mostly investigated. See this one, and this one, right? Here. So this has been mostly investigated, which are reflected in red colors. Right? Both even these are two diagrams. two diagrams give the same meaning, which means that these areas are mostly frequently investigated. These are the, because in these area we have established knowledge, common knowledge, that green human resource management has an has a positive outcome of environmental performance. Once the green human resource management is there, that companies environmental performance is really high. So that has been established by frequent research, by so many research studies, right? So which indicates that common knowledge is there, which is already established. And we have green nodes. We don't see green nodes here, right? But if you have green nodes here, that represents moderate level of research on a particular area. But we don't see the green nodes here. But we have blue nodes, right? Here you can, when you can see this one, blue nodes here. All these are blue. All these are blue, and all these are blue. But here both of these, even both of these keywords are belong to the one particular blue cluster, right? So out of these two, this one has been frequently investigated, but when it comes to this is indicated in blue color, which indicates very low research on this area. Blue color indicates, blue color indicates, sorry, blue color, blue, indigo, violet shows areas with low keyword density. These are cool zones where fewer keywords co-occur, right? Warmer, hot zones suggest themes that are more prominent or central in the analyzed corpus, while cooler colors indicates less frequently co-occurring keywords or more peripheral topics, which means that the blue indicates gaps, very limited research available according to the investigated areas, right? So according to this finding, as you can see, all these, because this is a cluster representing psychological climate, and this is a cluster representing the green HRM practices. And when we exclude that, because this has been done frequently, and when you take this alone, uh, which is a competitive advantage, which is a non-environmental outcome, uh, has not been investigated properly. Frequently we have very limited information, very limited knowledge on that. Then if you are planning to do a research study, take these areas, take these, because I have created this theme. Then green psychological climate can be taken for further study, and you can take what is the relationship when, what is the connection between green HRM and green psychological climate. These keywords can be taken as dimensions of green psychological climate, right? So that's how you can interpret the gaps, review, in other words, right? So those are the gaps that you can highlight simply by these two diagrams, especially by this diagram, right? So those informations, now how you can report. Finally, you can see our outline, right? So descriptives can be included using our biblioshiny, and determinants can be done, determinants, a list of determinants can be found from the literature, as I said earlier, and review can be done, right? The table can be explained, and then if there are no any variable in this particular list that we are going to investigate, you can simply say that there is a gap, and simply you can produce a similar paragraph, similar graph, density visualization and keyword co-occurrence analysis graphs in this paragraph, and explain, right? And finally, you can say the theoretical gaps as well, because you created you created that paragraph, sorry, you created these columns, right? These columns, in these columns you summarize the theories by referring each and a article to analyze and to support their conceptual framework. You mentioned, you summarized here what are the theories that has been used, right? So then simply by observing, by analyzing all these theoretical lenses, theoretical theories, especially theories, you can identify which theories have been mostly used, which theories have been least used to support the theoretical conceptual frameworks. And simply by analyzing, you can understand which one is the ideal theory to support, for example, to support this one, right? Simply you can understand when you create this type of a model, right? When you are studying this one, this cluster, right? Impact of green psychological climate on green, sorry, impact of green human resource management on green psychological climate, then you can find out which one is the most relevant theory, right? By simply analyzing uh, this column and industry, and simply you can do necessary simply by using simple excel chart drawing functionalities. You can draw charts, you can draw pie diagrams, right? And simply indicate where the gaps prevails, right? So those things can be done. And finally, conceptual framework can be drawn and hypothesis can be developed. Then finally, literature review contribution. Overall gap, as I did show you earlier, that table highlighting all the gaps can be inserted, and then that table can be explained and summary can be written at the end. So that's all about how you can develop your second chapter with systematic literature review methodology. All done. Thank you. Right, all answered. Engage in continuous learning. Wish you all the best.